After saving the younger son of the heir apparent, my snobbish mother betrothed me to him as his second wife. Although Gu Yanji was distant, he treated me well, and for 3 years I lived a fairly happy life, managing the household and raising the children until the woman who had abandoned her husband and child got tired of playing around and came back to demand her rightful place. That night, he coaxed me on the bed. Rueer's birth mother can't very well be a concubine. At most she can be raised to a secondary wife. The power in the household will still be in your hands. Our son also lay soft and limp in my arms. I only recognize you as my mother. I believed it. But Amon. Later, when we went up the mountain to pray for blessings and encountered assassins, my son cried out in panic, "Father, protect mother." Quickly, the dagger pierced my chest. Looking at the family of 3 huddled together in an embrace, I suddenly felt like a joke. When I opened my eyes again, I felt a slight tug on my skirt and a maid cried out in surprise, "Whose child has gone missing?" Looking away, I pulled my skirt free from the child's hand. "It's probably a child trafficker scam. Let's go." At this moment, Rueer still looked 4 years old. He sat there in a daze on the ground, the hem of his splendid robe stained with a few specks of mud. The maid hurried after him, her tone full of surprise. "Miss, that young little gentleman is clearly from a wealthy family and got separated. The fabric on him is all." I turned to look. The little boy stood up and reached out his hand toward me, opening his mouth as if to call out something. But I had already walked far away and couldn't hear him clearly anymore. I could only see his small figure being pushed apart by the crowd once again. His pitiful gaze was just like the day I first met him. But this time, I had no intention of getting involved in his family's affairs anymore. I was eager to stay as far away as possible. After all, I already knew that 3 years later, his mother would come looking for him and their family of 3 would be reunited while I would end up with a sword through my heart. The moment I stepped into the manor, I felt like even my breathing had become much easier since marrying into the manor. My mother never let me come back. There are no wives or concubines in the heir's residence. Spend more time with the young heir. Once he grows up, he'll naturally treat you like his own mother. She always said that a second wife, if she does it well, is no worse than a biological mother. A mocking smile curled at the corners of my lips for my mother's naivety and even more for my own. Fortunately, in this life, I ran fast enough. Whoever wants to be the second wife can go do it. But early the next morning, my mother sent someone to call me to the front hall. Before I had even stepped inside, the man's familiar voice made the hairs on my body stand on end. I'd been hearing that voice for 3 years. From cold and distant to intimate in bed. It was indeed Gu Yanji. But why would he be at my house? Didn't I already run away? My mind was in a complete muddle. I turned around and was about to leave, but I didn't expect my mother to be so sharp-eyed. "Tanger, come quickly." I quickly pulled out 2 hairpins from the left side of my hair, my tone flustered. "Mother, my hair bun has come undone. And I can't possibly see anyone like this. I'll go and fix myself up again first." My mother awkwardly apologized to Gu Yanji and the man's voice was flat, revealing no emotion all the way back to the courtyard. My mind kept spinning non-stop in this life. I left no information for Rueer. Yet Gu Yanji still came looking for me. The servants in the front hall were carrying countless gifts of thanks in their hands. Just as in my previous life, this could only mean that Rueer had also been reborn. Just like in the last life, he told his father the location of my residence, which was why Gu Yanji came. As for whether Gu Yanji had been reborn, my mind was even more muddled. So, I applied another thick layer of powder. The maid was frightened half to death by me. "Miss, you were already fair-skinned. And now you've made yourself look like a paper effigy." That was exactly the effect I wanted. My mind gradually cleared a little, and I changed into the pink and blue dress Gu Yanji hated most. Then went resolutely back toward the front hall as if I were marching to my death all the way. There, I kept praying that Gu Yanji had already left. But when I looked up and our eyes met, I saw the man unexpectedly furrow his brow slightly. And the heavy stone in my heart kept rising and falling. You girl. My mother was dumbfounded, but she couldn't say anything in front of Gu Yanji. She held it in for a long time before forcing out a smile. Today, you've dressed a bit too heavily. This is the young master of the Gu residence. Did you save a little child yesterday? As soon as I opened my mouth, a thin layer of powder fell from the corner of my lips, and Gu Yanji's brows furrowed even more deeply. But I was delighted. No, you must have mistaken me for someone else. My mother desperately kept signaling to me with her eyes, but I pretended not to see it. Gu Yanji's tone was indifferent. My son would never lie. I suppose Miss Lin has a poor memory and doesn't remember. In that case, we won't disturb you any longer. He stood up. And my mother grew somewhat anxious. Won't the air stay a little longer? Gu Yanji seemed unable to endure my horrifying makeup for even one more second. He lifted a foot and walked right out of the residence. I almost laughed out loud. Heaven is helping me. With Gu Yanji in this condition, it's clear he hasn't been reborn. In the previous life. Although he always had a faint expression, when my mother asked us to talk a little longer, he stared at my face and nodded in agreement. That was what let my snobbish mother sniff out. As I opened the door, a slight pain throbbed in my forehead. And my mother was furious. What are you making a fuss about now with such a thick layer of powder and dressed up like a ghost who could still recognize you? I knew she was angry that I hadn't managed to attract a wealthy son-in-law like Gu Yanji. So I let her go on with her curses. The maid came over and spoke softly. Miss. Young master, he has come to see you. My eyes lit up and I lifted my skirt hem and rushed out. Under the osmanthus tree outside the manor gate stood a tall man in a blue robe. Like a straight slender stalk of green bamboo. That was my childhood sweetheart Hyunshing, and also the first person I had ever loved in my previous life. The day word spread that I was going to become the young lord's second wife. He had someone call me out. It was also under this osmanthus tree that the young man's eyes turned a little red. Is it really that you're willing to marry him? My family may not have such great power in the capital, but I can still protect you. By then, my mother had already accepted Gu Yanji's lavish bride price behind my back. I nodded and looked at him in silence. The next time I heard news of Hyunshing, it was 2 years later when he died in battle on the battlefield. I don't know why a gentleman would fight for military merit. But I seem to be able to guess why. At this moment, we are all standing here alive under the osmanthus tree where we played and grew up together. Run a little slower. There's no need to be afraid of falling. I hadn't heard Hyunshing's voice for so long that I felt a little dazed. When I looked up, I saw a flash of surprise in his eyes. Realizing what a mess I looked like now, I was so embarrassed I wanted to die. How did your face turn so pale? Are you sick? He frowned slightly, his tone carrying a hint of urgency. Has the physician in the manor examined it? The osmanthus tree carried an intoxicating fragrance. I tugged at the corners of my mouth and another layer of powder fell off. Shing, do I look good today? He first froze. Then the tips of his ears turned bright red. Beautiful. Tanger has been beautiful since she was little. I used to always suspect that Hyunshing was blind. And now I had proof. I'm not sick. I just put on too much powder. So I look pale. I explained to him. But Hyunshing seemed to half understand and half not, his eyes still fixed straight on me. That's good if you're not sick. I just saw a bunch of people leaving the mansion. Did something happen, in any case? I'd already sent Gu Yanji away and I couldn't be bothered to bring it up again. I might as well change the subject. Are you free tomorrow? A new pen shop just opened up on the street. Shall we go take a look together? Hyunshing took out a few pens from his pocket. I've already bought them. I hated him for being such a blockhead. Can't I go with you to have another look? At this point, he finally reacted and hurriedly agreed. When Hyunshing left, He was practically about to jump up with joy. And I was happy, too, since I don't plan to marry Gu Yanji in this life. Of course, I need to choose a good husband for myself. In fact, if it hadn't been for my mother meddling in between, He Yunqing had always been my first choice. But I didn't expect that before even reaching the shop I'd run into Gu Yanji and Ruer first. I chatted away to He Yunqing about the storybook I'd been reading last night. And he listened while handing me the newly bought osmanthus cake. That was when Ruer suddenly rushed out. He sprang madly from the sedan chair nearby, and before anyone could react, he held the soup dumpling in his hand at He Yunqing. Greasy broth dripped down along the blue-green robe. And I frowned, pulling him back a little behind me. You shameless seducer of my mother. As soon as the 4-year-old child spoke, everyone present was stunned. He Yunqing looked bewildered, and I was tugging him away when before we had even taken 2 steps, a little ornament suddenly clung to my leg. My mother once said that Ruer's temperament didn't take after Gu Yanji. He was aloof and distant, while his son was extraordinarily hot-tempered. In my previous life, I spent 2 years winning over this little devil before he obediently started calling me mother. Mom, don't you want daddy anymore? Why are you walking with another man? The little boy's voice was choked with sobs and tears kept dripping down. I don't know what you're talking about. I reached out to push him away, but Ruer only cried even harder. Is it because I didn't ask father to save mother that mother is angry with me, mother? I already know I was wrong. Please come back. A large hand covered the child's incessant crying. It was the first time I had ever seen He Yunqing's face darken. Where did this crazy child come from, acting so disgracefully? Calling an unmarried girl mother in the middle of the street. He really deserves a beating. Only then did Gu Yanji, not far away, seem to notice the commotion here. He lifted the curtain and walked over. I wanted to lower my head, but I realized it was already too late. His gaze fell on my face. After a 2-second pause, he swept He Yunqing's hand away somewhat displeasedly, then tugged at Ruer, intending to return to the sedan chair. But the 4-year-old child was crying heartbreakingly, Mother. Come home with me. Don't go with that vile man. Even after everyone had gone far away, I still hadn't snapped out of Gu Yanji's gaze. Do you know them? He Yunqing's expression was rather unpleasant, and I tugged lightly at his sleeve. It's nothing important. Brother Xing. Don't be angry. I'll go back to the manor with you to change your clothes. Then we'll go buy a brush. He Yunqing's face instantly turned bright red. You stopped calling me that when you were 10. How, of course. It was to cheer him up. Looking at the corners of his mouth tightly pressed together, yet still slightly upturned, my earlier irritability eased quite a bit. He Yunqing sent me to the gate of the residence, then stuffed 2 pieces of pastry into my hands, coaxing me just like he did when he was comforting a child. Go back quickly. If you miss dinner, Auntie will scold you again. I hopped and bounced toward the dining hall, swinging the pastry in my hand. In the 3 years after marrying Gu Yanji, I had almost forgotten what it felt like to jump. My mother repeatedly reminded me, in a family like ours, from an ordinary household, once we've latched onto a high branch, we have to carry ourselves properly. Which young lady from a prominent family's mansion isn't poised, generous, and dignified? She lowered her voice. As long as you behave yourself, support your husband, and raise your children well as a dutiful wife. Once Gu Yanji inherits his father's title, he'll be a prince, and you'll be a princess consort. But even after I put on a face of virtue and propriety, gentle as water, I still got stabbed to death by someone. Stepping into the dining hall, I found that father and mother had already started eating, and neither of them was seated in the place of honor. Sitting empty in the very center was a little turnip-headed child. When he saw me come in, Ruer's eyes instantly lit up in a terrifying way, and he flipped off the bench and into my arms. Mother, you're back. I almost dropped the pastry in my hand. The fawning look on my mother's face made me sick. Little young master, slow down. I was icy cold all over. Only after glancing around and realizing Gu Yanji wasn't there did I feel a little better. I raised my hand and pushed Ruair farther away, but he still clung to my arm and rubbed against it pitifully. How did you get here? I sneaked out. The dog hole in the mansion wall hasn't been sealed up. Mother, give me a hug. I miss you so much. I forcibly pulled my hand free and ordered the servant beside me, send someone to take this child back. Before Ruair even started crying. My mother was so anxious she kept stamping her feet. Oh dear, I've already sent someone to inform the young master. What's wrong with letting the child eat a meal here? I looked at her coldly. My mother showed no hint of guilt. This child likes you so much. And he even calls you mother and me grandmother. If you really let this child become your son. Crash. Unable to endure it any longer, I raised my hand and held the nearest dinner plate. And the entire room instantly fell silent. I'd rather die than be someone's second wife. My parents were stunned into silence by me, but the child beside me was not. Mother, Ruair's eyes were red-rimmed. And tears kept pouring out of his big eyes. The bad woman has already been killed by Daddy. In the last life, Daddy was crying too. He said he regretted it. Mother. Please don't be angry anymore. Okay. He was crying heartbreakingly. You're scaring me like this. I already know I was wrong. She isn't even half as good to me as you are. And Daddy will remember soon enough to marry you and bring you home. Guyanji's indifference shocked me once Aga. I had been with him for 3 years and watched his attitude toward me slowly soften from coldness. Yet, he could raise a legal wife without even blinking. Yao Shui, as Ruair's birth mother and Guyanji's first woman, regained his full love and favor in just 1 month. Yet, he could also kill her without the slightest mercy. The child's softening words before me not only failed to warm my heart in the slightest but made it even colder. Mother, hold me like you used to. You always held me while coaxing me to eat. He tugged at my hand and acted spoiled. Just like in my past life. But I hadn't forgotten that half a month after Yao Shui appeared, he no longer let me touch him. He said his real mother had come back and he wanted his real mother to feed him. And now he's clinging to me like a vampire again. Gripping me so tightly he won't let go. I looked at the red pastry on the table and tightened my grip on the child's wrist. Fine, I'll feed you. Ruair lay in my arms in satisfaction. Not lowering his head to see what he was eating. His eyes fixed tightly on me. I took whatever and he ate whatever. As long as I lowered my head, I could see the happy content expression on his face. But I remained expressionless all the same. My mother leaned in close to me and spoke softly. Tanger, this child really is fated with you. I heard that because of him making such a fuss. The young Marquis never married for years. Although it is a bit unfair for an unmarried maiden to become a stepmother, seeing how close this child is to you. I suppose life in the future. She had not even finished speaking when she widened her eyes in terror. The child in her arms also seemed to sense something was wrong. He stared blankly as he reached up to scratch his neck. A fine, dense rash quickly broke out there. My father was scared out of his wits and quickly called for the maidservants. Go get the physician from the manor. Hurry. My mother could barely speak clearly anymore. At this point, she wasn't even mentioning how I was supposed to seduce Guyanji later. She was trembling all over in fear. What's wrong with the young heir's grandson? What happened? The little child in my arms kept scratching his neck with one hand while crying out for his mother. Desperately burrowing into my embrace. I looked down at him, my gaze indifferent. Now my mother no longer worried about whether Guyanji would have a grudge against me. Because of Ruair, they were only worried that seeing their son like this, Guyanji might have our entire household beheaded together. Guyanji arrived even before the physician, seemingly brimming with endless rage. My parents were so frightened that they fell to their knees and no longer dared entertain any absurd matchmaking ideas. He reached out to take Ruair and was about to leave in a hurry. But then his sleeve was tugged. Looking down together, we saw the boy with his eyes tightly closed, clutching my sleeve so hard that his lips had been bitten bloody. "Daddy, please ask Mommy to come home. Hurry up and remember to bring Mommy back home." Guyanji's gaze fell on my face, his eyes dark and terrifying. I raised my hand and forcefully pulled the little boy's hand away, my voice flat. "Shitsi should take the little Xiaonan to see a shaman. It's not a solution to let him keep spouting nonsense like this." My mother was so frightened that she reached up and pulled at me, looking down at their trembling, terrified expressions. A flash of satisfaction passed through my heart. It had better not be that Miss Lin cast some kind of witchcraft or curse on my son. Guyanji's voice was terrifyingly cold. Ru'er in his arms was breathing faster and faster, so he had no choice but to stride outside. As soon as he disappeared, my mother stood up and was about to hit me. "You crazy girl. What did you feed the young master? See what you've done now. The heir apparent even hates our family." Glancing at the almond pastry on the table, I said in an even tone, "Wasn't the food on the table all prepared by you? Why ask me?" My mother was speechless and slumped dejectedly into her chair. My parents discussed it all night and still sent a pile of apology gifts to the prince's residence. Guyanji refused to accept them, only telling our family to keep far away from Ru'er from now on and telling me never to appear in front of his son again. I was overjoyed and spent my days running off to see poetry and paintings with Hyunxing. But I forgot that Guyanji had always been the kind of man whose word could be trusted, just like when he first married me. He told me that he was only considering the fact that I was Ru'er's savior and that the mansion also lacked a mistress. He would have no improper thoughts toward me. Later he took the initiative to come to my room, just as he had promised me in a moment of deep affection that there would be no more wives or concubines in the mansion. Only me. Yet when Yao Shui returned, he changed his story again. He was always like this, and this time was no exception. Just as Hyunxing had escorted me to the front gate of the residence, I looked up and saw Guyanji's sedan chair stopped at the entrance to my home. My eyelid twitched, and before I could even react, I saw him in a black robe walking to the front gate of the residence with my mother. This girl just loves to play around. She'll be back soon. There's no need for the heir to wait outside the door. Before the words had even fallen, Guyanji's gaze froze on me and Hyunxing. "Didn't she just come back?" My mother hurried over to me in a few steps, delighted, and tugged at my arm, pulling me towards Guyanji. "You little plaything. Hurry up. The young master has been waiting for a long time." Her other arm was grabbed by someone, but my mother couldn't pull her away. Turning back, she saw Hyunxing staring at Guyanji with a dark expression. "Auntie, is something the matter?" Only then did my mother seem to notice Hyunxing. Her expression turned somewhat awkward. "Xing, young master, and Tanger get along well. Now that he's sick and doesn't want to eat, Shitsi is asking Tanger to go take a look." Hyunxing's brows furrowed even deeper. He remembered that mischievous child. "Auntie, for Tanger, an unmarried young lady, to go to a strange man's residence like this would be bad for her reputation." My mother was already growing impatient. She usually quite liked that child Hyunxing, but compared with the powerful elite, the He family fell far short. "If you're sick, then call for a physician." "I'm not a physician." I looked at Guyanji standing straight not far away. Ever since just now, he had not said a word, his gaze resting on Hyunxing and me as though he felt nothing at all. But my son returned from the Lin residence and then developed a high fever that wouldn't subside. And that has nothing to do with the Lin residence either. He is good at putting pressure on PLE. And sure enough, my mother became so anxious that she nearly jumped out of her skin. I took a deep breath and suppressed the nauseating feeling. "I'll just go take a look. Whether he eats or not, I won't go a second time." Guyanji's eyes darkened a little. "Of course." Hyunxing's hand on my arm didn't loosen. Instead, it tightened a little more. I'll stay with you. My mother wanted to interrupt, but I answered first. Guyanxi only glanced over lazily, seeming unconcerned when the sedan chair slowly came to a stop. I arrived at the place where I had wasted 3 years in my previous life. Before I even entered Ruer's room, a child's voice came from inside. I won't eat. If mother doesn't come see me, I won't eat. Didn't father promise me you would go find mother? Why hasn't he come yet? Just as he was about to step into the room, Guyanxi stopped Yunqing. If my son sees you here, his condition will probably only get worse. I patted his hand to make him wait for me at the door, then turned and went into the room. Ruer's allergies seemed to have already cleared up. He was just lying on the bed like a child throwing a tantrum. It irritated me to look at him, so I lightly tapped the table beside me. The little boy turned his head and with a whoosh scrambled up from the bed. Mother, eat. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him and pointed at the plate beside me. Since you know I gave you apricot powder to eat, you should understand that I don't want you anymore. I won't feel sorry for you at all. The little boy's smile froze on his face, and he looked at me at a loss. So now that you can't use refusing to eat to manipulate me, all it'll do is make your father bring me here. And I'll only hate you even more. The boy's eyes turned red, and he pouted. He really did look like a 4-year-old child, but I knew he was at least 7 or 8 years old. This child has always been clever. Ever since I came back, he had been clinging to me with the tactics of acting cute, crying, and rolling around on the ground. Because in my previous life, I was the soft-hearted one and would surely feel sorry for him. Mother, will you marry father again? He bit into the bun, tears falling non-stop. I'll make father treat you well from now on, and I'll treat you well too. Can you forgive us? I told him it wouldn't work, but he wouldn't listen anyway. He's just like his father in the eyes of those in power. The words of commoners have never mattered. Only after he had stuffed himself until his belly was round did I get up and walk out. Young master, he and Miss Lin seemed to have a very good relationship. As I walked all the way through the back garden, I kept going faster and faster. Yet Guyanxi still followed at an unhurried pace. He suddenly spoke and I turned back wearily. Guyanxi chuckled softly and shifted the topic. Miss Lin seems quite familiar with my residence. I drew in a slight breath, only then remembering that when I had come, it had been the servant leading the way. Now, in my haste to leave, I had pulled Yunqing onto a different path. Guyanxi's gaze drifted lightly onto my face. After leaving the Marquis's residence, my expression was terrible. Yunqing was also very quiet. It was only when we reached the manor gate that the sedan chair finally stopped. The crescent moon hung in the sky and we stepped down from the carriage together under the osmanthus tree. When it was time to part, he seemed to be weighing his words. After a long while, he finally asked, "You and I?" I cut him off, my tone a little urgent. "Brother Xing, do you like me?" A flower petal drifted down gently from above, and the person before me stared wide-eyed. I knew Yunqing planned to confess his feelings to me 3 months later because that would be my birthday, but I couldn't wait any longer. Guyanxi couldn't remember it, but he had already begun to believe what Ruer said and to doubt me. "You do like me, don't you?" "I do, too, Brother Xing." I said it again while he was still dazed. Yunqing's face was almost flushed crimson, his eyes sparkling brightly. Seeing him like that made my originally flustered heart settle down quite a bit. "Really, Tanger?" I nodded, then dropped another bombshell. "If you truly love each other, Brother Xing, go back and talk to uncle and come propose marriage." "Okay." Yunqing was so flustered he started stammering. "All right, I'll go within 2 days." Blushing, I threw myself into his arms, my voice already breaking. "Don't wait 2 days. Can we come to ask for my hand tomorrow? I'm afraid I won't be able to marry you. I'm afraid my mother will accept someone else's betrothal gift." I thought that as long as I hid, everything would be fine. But in the end, Ru'er came straight to my home. I thought it would be enough to anger Guyenji. But even with his son sick like that, he could still endure it and invite me over. The one truly responsible. I was afraid that Ru'er would go on a hunger strike and force him to marry me. But he really did grit his teeth and come to my door to make the marriage proposal. Yunqing was very smart. He seemed to understand something and gently rested his hand on my shoulder. Okay, I'll come pick it up first thing tomorrow morning. Don't be afraid, Tanger. Tears burst forth, and listening to his heartbeat, nearly driven mad. I only wanted to hold on tight to the person who truly cherished me. I did not sleep a wink all night. Early the next morning, just as the estate gates opened, my mother cried out in surprise. I looked at Yunqing, whose eyes were also somewhat darkened, and my heart finally settled. My mother was a little happy, but only a little. In the past, Yunqing had been her most satisfactory son-in-law. But yesterday, Guyenji came personally to my door to take me away, which brought all her little calculations back to the surface. She didn't agree to Yunqing on the spot, only hinting that the betrothal gifts were not enough. Yunqing said the preparations had been rushed and he would go back right away to make up for it. But I knew exactly what she was thinking better than anyone. The He family had brought so many things. That was already the greatest sincerity. I stopped Yunqing from going back to the mansion to keep digging into the family's savings and pulled my mother aside. If you dare even think of making me someone's second wife, I'll strangle that child to death and bring the whole household down with me. This time my mother was scared by me, cursing under her breath. She accepted the betrothal gifts and even looking at me one more time nearly made her faint from anger. I pulled Yunqing aside. You help me find someone. Yunqing just listened obediently with a red face, not asking me why. Just as he had from childhood to now, trusting me unconditionally. After saying what I needed to say, I looked at his reddened earlobes and couldn't resist reaching out to gently pinch one. Didn't sleep last night. He scratched his head awkwardly, but his eyes seemed glued to me. I can't sleep. It feels like a dream. Tanger, I've known since I was little that you were going to marry me. But his gaze seemed to soften into water. I'm still overjoyed. Tanger, I'll be good to you. Of course. I believe it. Whether it was the mutual understanding we had from growing up together or the fact that in my previous life he fought to the death on the battlefield so I would have a way out. He was always Yunqing, the one with only me in his heart and eyes. When the assassin's dagger pierced my chest, for a brief moment I thought of him. If Yunqing were here, he would never let anyone bully me like this. The gaze burning into my back was almost frighteningly hot. I turned around and met Guyenji's eyes. He stared at the intimate gesture between me and Yunqing, his eyes flickering slightly. My son asked me to bring something to Miss Lin. He slowly walked forward and handed me the drawing paper in his hand. I took it casually. I didn't even need to look to know it was more of the same, some childish apology or peacemaking talk, and I had no desire whatsoever to open it. Perhaps because my choices were different from those in my previous life, some things had also changed dramatically. When the plague struck, I was shocked. In my previous life, this plague didn't arrive until 2 years later, and at that time, there were many patients in the capital with persistent high fevers and non-stop coughing. This illness is both sudden and severe. Once infected, there is a 50% chance of dying from high fever, weakness, and dehydration. Ru'er was one of them. In my previous life, everyone kept their distance from it. Even the heir's grandson. There were only a handful of maids and servants by his side at that time. Guyenji was also away from home, and I held Ru'er, whose fever refused to go down, coaxing him through night after night. That was the first time the little devil softened his voice and acted spoiled with me. The scorching hot child lay in my arms. Mother, if I die, then you and father should have another child. The first time he called me mother, I was overjoyed. Even the bitter taste of the contraceptive decoction Guyanji used to make me drink every day seemed not quite as harsh in my mind anymore. When Guyanji came to my door, I was packing my things and my mother was cursing in fury. "If you dare leave, then don't you recognize me as your mother anymore? There's a plague everywhere right now. What kind of person goes rushing off to die?" He stepped through the door as if he hadn't seen my mother. His usually calm strides rarely hurried. "Miss Lin, my son has had a high fever for 3 days already. And he's been calling your name the whole time." I didn't even glance at him. "That little ungrateful brat can live or die for all I care. Just let him take a look at you from a distance as if you were taking pity on the child." Seeing that I wouldn't respond, my mother came forward and grabbed my arm. "The young lord is talking to you." I jerked free and looked at her mockingly. Under my gaze, my mother felt guilty and fell silent. "Are you afraid I'll catch the plague now?" "Sorry. I'm powerless to help. I need to go see my fiancé." Guyanji's movements paused slightly and his expression darkened terribly. "Fiancé, when did you get engaged?" Yunqing was sicker than Roer, but he didn't tell me. I found out by asking around. At this point in his previous life, he was already dead, and I was terribly panicked too. Afraid that this plague would really take his life. Guyanji was still following behind me. "He's burning up all over and hasn't eaten anything for 3 days. So, it just depends on." I'm so annoyed. "Then go find his biological mother." "I didn't give birth to him, so what does it have to do with me?" Guyanji was utterly speechless by my words for the first time. A look of confusion appeared on his face, but he keeps saying, "You're his mother." I looked at him with disgust. "Didn't you know who you've slept with yourself? Go find whoever fathered the child and stop blocking my way, will you?" Disgusting. As expected, Yunqing refused to let me into the estate. And the servant, looking distressed, sent me back again. Young master said that if Miss catches the plague he'd rather die now. My heart ached sourly and I really wanted to cry. "What do you mean, die or not die? How unlucky. Then give this to him and tell him that if he isn't well I won't have a good life either." I handed the letter paper to the servant. On this letter paper I wrote down all the bitterness and suffering of my previous life. I told him that if he died, I would go back down the old path again. When Yunqing saw it, he would surely be heartbroken beyond measure. If you want to strike at your lover's weakness, of course, you have to put the knife to your own neck in this way. Even if he had one foot truly in the underworld, he still wouldn't be able to close his eyes in peace. After going out for a trip, when I returned to the manor, even the maids beside me didn't dare to come near me. I was delighted to have some peace and quiet and slept in the manor for a full 7 or 8 days. It wasn't until someone came to report that Yunqing was waiting for me outside the manor. The rapid and violent plague in the capital had already eased by more than half. People had begun to appear one after another in the alleyways and at street corners, and the imperial household was also distributing porridge on the streets. Yunqing stood there looking noticeably thinner after just a few days apart. I walked up to him with red-rimmed eyes, only to find that his eyes were redder than mine. "Are you all right now? My Tanger has suffered." At the very moment he spoke, the tenderness in his eyes nearly drowned me. "How about we get married in a month?" Yunqing smiled gently, but the moisture in his eyes only grew more intense. "I just got my strength back the day before yesterday and had someone bring me paper and brush. So I drew a wedding dress for you. The embroideress said it would take a month to rush it. Once Tanger's wedding dress is finished, let's get married." I nodded in agreement. I didn't deliberately ask around about the heir's residence, but my mother muttered at the dinner table that it was a good thing the young heir was blessed with great fortune and had pulled through. If something really had happened to the young heir, we'd all have to suffer for it. 2. I'm asking you to go take a look. And you still won't go. As soon as my mother finished speaking, my father slapped the table. It's not as if we were the ones who gave him the illness. Why do you keep going on and on about it, all day long? It's this heir apparent. And that heir apparent, our Tanger, is already engaged. Can't you put those thoughts to rest? I was a little surprised because whether in my previous life or in this one, my father had always sided with my mother. My mother stared at me, her lips moving slightly. It's not as if an engagement can't be broken. I can tell that the noble heir is absolutely smitten with our daughter. When a child is sick, they're sure to want to see the person they're closest to. He doesn't have his birth mother anymore. And he likes Tanger so much. Who knows, the two of them started arguing. I stuffed a piece of meat into my mouth. I knew my mother wouldn't give up on Guyenji that easily. As long as Guyenji showed even the slightest interest in me again, she might even knock me out in the middle of the night and send me straight to someone's bed. But just as my mother was still waiting for Guyenji to come to our door again, word spread through the capital that the heir's birth mother had returned. My mother came back from outside muttering curses all the way. That heir apparent is blind too. His son is about to kill that woman, and he still keeps her by his side. At this point, she no longer feared Guyenji at all. All that remained was the annoyance of having lost a rich son-in-law. That vixen is definitely not a good person. She won't even acknowledge her own son. And yet, she can make the heir apparent want to name her as his consort. That demon. My mother cursed Yao Shui at home for a full 3 days. It was utterly baffling. After finishing my lip rouge, I admired myself for a while before running out of the manor. The young man I loved was standing beneath that familiar osmanthus tree, waiting for me with smiling eyes. The Lantern Festival hasn't started yet. What are you running so fast for? He raised a hand to brush the stray hair from my forehead. His fingertips trembled slightly, and his face turned red again. Watching Yunqing's little gestures whenever he wanted to touch me but was too shy. I felt sweetness welling up in my heart. This plague in the capital was no small matter. In years past, the Lantern Festival would be bustling. People packed shoulder to shoulder. But this year, it was much quieter. So I spotted the 3 people not far away at a glance. Beside Guyenji stood Yao Shui, smiling sweetly. Ruier was walking alone at the very front. And just as he was about to fall, Yao Shui hurried forward to support him, only to be forcefully shoved away. The child's voice, filled with disgust and sharpness, carried far. I only found it grating. Wasn't this always what he wanted? Guyenji really did keep Yao Shui by his side and had no time to come looking for you. He Yunqing's tone was chilling. He's truly blind to be unable to see it. My Tanger is so wonderful. He's not good with words. And ever since he was little, he rarely praised me so directly like this. He was obviously furious. Let's go watch the fireworks over there. I didn't want to see that family of 3 either. Whether they were loving each other or loving and fighting at the same time, I didn't want to see it. The little bit of interest had just developed in me was completely overshadowed by Yao Shui's bold, sultry allure. Exactly the same as in my previous life. Only this time, I was an outsider. The fireworks were dazzling and the highest point on the bridge was finally packed with people. All of them wanting to catch a glimpse of this beautiful sight. Yunqing carefully shielded me, his palm gradually warming. And the tingling sensation of our fingers tightly intertwined made both of us blush and race our hearts. I turned my head and Yunqing was looking at me as if fireworks were blooming in his eyes. In a daze, I remembered that in my previous life, I had also watched fireworks with Guyenji. That was a month before Yao Shui arrived. After finally coaxing the clingy Ruier to sleep, I pulled him along and slipped out to watch the Lantern Festival. The Lantern Festival was already nearing its end, and only the fireworks kept blooming non-stop. By then, I had already fallen in love with him. I thought that spending my whole life being a good wife and raising children would be very happy, too. As the fireworks burst, I took the initiative to pull down his neck and kissed him. He seemed not to have expected that I, who had always been so proper, would do such a childish thing and looked somewhat surprised. Then, swept up in emotion, we kissed as the fireworks blazed brightest. How happy I was then is how sick I feel now. I shook my head and looked at Hyunshing. His eyes were very clear, only me. After I stared at him for a long time, he blushed and turned his head away again, pretending to keep watching the fireworks. I lightly rose onto my tiptoes and leaned in close to his ear. Brother Shing, I really like you. As the fireworks burst, I gently kissed his cheek. The next second, a sharp pain shot through my wrist. A man in a black robe suddenly charged out from nowhere, desperately trying to pry apart my interlocked fingers with Hyunshing's. I cried out in pain. And Hyunshing immediately let go, switching to gripping the man's arm in front of him. Lin. How dare you? Guyunji's eyes seemed to be spewing blazing fire. After a brief 2-second daze, I was chilled to the bone. In this life, Guyunji wouldn't have such a strong possessive desire toward me. Perhaps he had secretly seen me with Hyunshing somewhere and was stimulated into recalling part of his memories. I grabbed Hyunshing and was about to run, but someone suddenly wrapped their arms around my legs. Mother woo woo woo, I had never felt so desperate as I did at this moment, as if I were mired in a swamp and unable to break free. The suffocating feeling was about to engulf me, and I desperately tried to shake off these two men. Father and son. Ruaer was thrown into the lake and Guyunji looked at me with eyes blazing with rage. Then at the child Hyunshing had tossed into the water. Then he dove in wildly to save his son. I was trembling and Hyunshing's voice rang out above my head. Don't be afraid. Tanger. Don't be afraid. Brother Shing is here. The icy cold in my chest seemed to slowly fade away. I came to my senses and grabbing Hyunshing ran home. Let's run away together, Brother Shing. Let's go. I was terrified. Guyunji clearly remembered. And he clearly wasn't going to let me go. Trust me, Tanger. Hyunshing's fingers were warm. He held my face in his hands, the tenderness in his eyes nearly spilling over. My family may not be powerful nobles, but we can still protect you. My maternal grandfather's family also has some influence in the imperial court. The heir apparent already spread the word a few days ago that he would marry the biological mother of the young heir as his consort. Everyone in the capital knows they'll be married by the end of the month, so he wouldn't dare do anything. His voice seemed to carry a strange magic. Tanger is very smart. Yao Shui made the right move with this chess piece. Our path has already been laid out, hasn't it? He smiled gently. It does sound rather romantic to elope with Tanger, but I'd rather marry you home openly and above board. It's something I've been looking forward to since I was 5. I wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. After I came to my senses, I gradually calmed down. I really had been frightened by Guyunji. Whether in my past life or in this one, I had never seen Guyunji so completely lose his composure. I remained uneasy until I fell asleep in the latter half of the night. Half awake and half asleep, I seemed to hear a noise coming from the windowsill. When I looked up, it almost scared me to death. Guyunji stood at the foot of my bed, drenched, his eyes red. Wife, I covered my mouth, terrified I might scream out loud. I couldn't make a sound. If anyone discovered that he and I were alone in the same room, I would really have to go back to that man-eating household again. I remember everything now, my wife. I was wrong. Guyunji's voice was hoarse. You can blame me and hate me all you want. It's all deserved by me and Ruaer. But you can't marry someone else. I stared at him fiercely. I don't need your apology. From now on, we'll each go our own way. But my dear wife, Ruaer and I can't do without you. You don't know that after you died, I couldn't sleep every night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was you lying in a pool of blood. His eyes softened, and he even tried to reach out and touch my face. Only after you died did I realize how important you were. During the days you were gone, neither Ruaer nor I slept well once. I was so full of regret, praying to heaven every day to give me another chance. By the grace of heaven. My dear wife, I've seen you again. It was the first time I had ever seen Guyenji's tears. The tears slid down his cheeks and fell into his damp clothes. He cried beautifully, but I only felt disgusted. Madam, will you come home with me? I'll treat you well this time. I promise I won't neglect you anymore. As his hand was about to touch my cheek, I pulled a gold hairpin from under the pillow and pressed it to my neck. Don't touch me, Guyenji. Every word you say now makes me incredibly disgusted. Seeing the pain in his eyes, I felt much better. I won't forgive you, but I also can't do anything to hurt you. So let me go. In this lifetime, I just want to live a peaceful life with the person I love. The words "the person I love" seemed to pierce him, and Guyenji suddenly straightened up. Your lover, Hyunsheng? No. His voice was rather loud. And I was even afraid it would attract the maids over. The person you love is me, my dear. The person you love is clearly me. You told me yourself. Have you forgotten? Get out. I don't want to say another word to this lunatic. This Guyenji is not the Guyenji I know. Whether in my previous life or this one, I've never seen Guyenji like this. I don't want to say another word to him. A lunatic like this should be kept far away. Guyenji ultimately didn't dare to get any closer because the spot where the gold hairpin was pressed against had already started to bleed. He seemed very afraid of seeing me bleed. Even his lips had turned pale. I'll leave right now. Don't use any more force. When he reached the door, he turned back to look at me. Lin. Wanting you can only be mine. I'll make you forgive me and then fall in love with me again. The cold glint in his eyes frightened me the next day. I told Hyunsheng about it that night. Guyenji indeed was no longer able to sneak into my room as the wedding date drew nearer. I kept feeling uneasy when Guyenji came openly to our residence. My mother was stunned, speechless. Countless betrothal gifts were sent to our estate, and Guyenji led Ruer in bowing to my parents. Tanger, I killed the vile woman who plotted against you again. Have you calmed down a little? He gave Ruer a push. Ruer has also been doing very well with his schoolwork lately. Hurry and show it to your mother. If he hadn't said it, I really wouldn't have known that the assassin had been sent by Yao Shui. Just looking at all those countless gold, silver, and jewels, I grew anxious. My mother was such a snobbish person. Sure enough, my mother's eyes lit up. Ruer was so happy that his little face turned rosy. Daddy has come to marry Mommy again. Mommy. Daddy remembers now. Let's go home. Okay. I grabbed my mother's wrist and tightened my grip. Do you remember what I said? My gaze fell on Ruer, and my mother's excited expression instantly froze. Guyenji seemed to have guessed something. His face went a little paler. Tanger, I can give you anything you want. What will it take for you to forgive me and Ruer? I stared straight at him. It's impossible. As the standoff dragged on, my father smashed the cup and saucer. Prince, I don't know what you mean by this. My daughter is already betrothed. And that is common knowledge throughout the city. How can there be any logic in a woman marrying two husbands, when Tanger's mother hinted at it back then? You said my daughter was trying to clutch onto your son in order to latch herself onto the prince's residence. And now you want to ruin my daughter's reputation all over again. I froze for a moment, then saw the ugly look on Guyenji's face, so he had once thought of me that way. No. Madam, listen to me. Back then, Ruer kept talking to me about you all day long. When I saw you, my heart stirred and I thought you must have said something to Ruer. My father was even angrier. Dragged them all out. Since when did my daughter become your wife? You've ruined my daughter's reputation. A madman gave birth to a little madman. Get out. Suddenly, my mother gasped sharply. A few days ago, Gu Yanji was still cold and indifferent. Yet now, he had become so ardent. And his son, too. He even addressed people as mother. Isn't that just a lunatic? Gu Yanji isn't normal, so his son isn't normal either. If her daughter married into that family and had children, wouldn't that make them a family of lunatics? Gu Yanji was driven out by the crowd. This should have been his first time being so embarrassed. But this matter still got out, and everyone said I was a seductress. Even though I was already betrothed. I had still bewitched the heir and his father so thoroughly that they were out of their minds. Sitting at the Lin residence gate every day, I was very afraid of seeing a look of disappointment on He Yunqing's face. But he said that he had already informed his family in advance. And now everyone knew that it was Gu Yanji and his son who had gone mad one-sidedly. The wedding was drawing nearer and nearer, and Gu Yanji was becoming more and more diligent in blocking me. Several times I nearly got forcibly taken away by him. But fortunately, He Yunqing had sent many people to stay by my side. During the 3 days before the wedding, the bride and groom were not allowed to see each other. After repeatedly instructing me on a long list of precautions, He Yunqing secretly pulled me aside. I left you a servant boy. If you want to see me, tell him. His cheeks were flushed. You haven't seen me for 3 days. How have you managed to bear it? I smiled with my lips pressed together. I can't take it anymore. He Yunqing's ears turned even redder. He squeezed my palm. Hold on a little longer. Soon we'll belong to each other. After he left, my smile slowly faded. He Yunqing did leave quite a few men behind. But when a madman is backed into a corner, I'm afraid there's nothing he won't do. So when Gu Yanji appeared before me again, his eyes lit up with delight. You really were waiting for me, weren't you? You let me in so easily today, my dear. I knew you still cared about me. You'd never marry anyone else. I let out a soft laugh, suppressing the sarcasm at the corners of my mouth. But I still hate you, Gu Yanji. He slowly knelt at my feet and reached out, trying to take my arm. Wife, what will it take for you to forgive me? I've already killed that woman. From now on, I'll have only you. Ruier has been studying even harder lately. You said you used to like it best when he studied hard. And I won't make you sad again. Wife, I miss you. Our son misses you, too. I slowly pulled the dagger from under my pillow. And Gu Yanji's gaze froze slightly. But Gu Yanji, when I was stabbed to death, you were protecting another woman. My heart ached so much. I handed him the dagger. How do you think I would ever forgive you? The dagger wasn't long. Even if it pierced the chest, it didn't seem likely to be fatal. Gu Yanji's gaze fell on my face, and my palms were slightly sweaty. Would you keep loving me if I got the same injury too? I pressed my lips together and smiled gently. Hubby, I've always loved you, but I just could never get past this hurdle in my heart. My parents only had me as their daughter. In my last life, they had to send off their black-haired child before their white-haired years. You not only let me down, but you also let them down. Gu Yanji looked at the dagger again. And after confirming that it really couldn't kill anyone, he took it and walked toward the front hall. I followed behind at an unhurried pace with my wedding drawing near these days. The house was festooned with lanterns and decorations, and there were many people about. My parents stared dumbfounded at Gu Yanji, who had appeared out of nowhere. How are you here? With a muffled groan, I looked at Gu Yanji's pale face in satisfaction. He turned around and smiled gently. Don't be angry anymore, my dear wife. I have scars, too. Before he had finished speaking, he fell straight to the ground. Throw him back to the Crown Prince's residence. Watching Gu Yanji being carried out, I let out a long sigh of relief. The next morning, the rumor was spreading like wildfire through the streets and alleys that the heir apparent, in order to marry Miss Lin of the Lin family, had resorted to threatening his own life when he couldn't get her love. But Miss Lin and her betrothed had been childhood sweethearts, and she would rather die than submit. The heir, driven mad, stabbed himself. And to this day remains unconscious, satisfied. I put on my wedding dress and got into the bridal sedan chair. By now, I can no longer make sense of Gu Yanji. He clearly didn't have such intense feelings for me. Yet, after losing me, it was as if he had lost everything. I was truly afraid he would get desperate and resort to extreme measures. Whether he tried to crash the wedding or hurt He Yunqing, neither was something I wanted to see. If murdering the powerful weren't such a serious crime, I would have wanted to replace the sedative on that dagger with poison and let my past self pay with my life. Tanger, you look beautiful today. When the bridal veil was lifted, I saw a pair of dazzling starry eyes. He Yunqing seemed a little drunk, staring at me in a daze. I pursed my lips and smiled. You look beautiful today, too. I didn't expect red to suit you so well. He was stunned at first, then his eyes curved with a smile. Really? Then I'll wear red from now on. I laughed at him. Don't you like blue? Wear what you like yourself. You don't have to accommodate me. He Yunqing froze in a daze. But blue is also because you like it, isn't it? I froze, vaguely remembering that when I was 7 or 8, I told him that my favorite color was green. Brother Xing, if I like something, does that mean I can have anything? I pushed him down onto the bed. And He Yunqing's expression was earnest, his eyes shimmering. Of course. Tanger can have whatever you want. A lovely spring night. The next day, I went to the woodshed and saw Royer huddled in the corner. His eyes were red-rimmed. Mother, how can you marry someone else when father is still unconscious and such a vile, shameless man at that? Yesterday, I came to find you to go back and look after father, and he locked me up here. When I get out, I will definitely find grandfather and have him punished. I took a sip of tea. Royer, it was I who locked you in here. He stared wide-eyed, unable to believe it. Mother! What are you saying? As confident as his father, I won't allow anyone to ruin my marriage. If you don't come, I naturally won't keep you confined. But mother, I already know I was wrong. And father knows it, too. His bewildered eyes slowly filled with tears. Aren't you the one who loved me the most? I looked at him coldly. I taught you that if you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. If today I stabbed you and then told you I was sorry, who would forgive me? He fell silent and I looked at the top of his head. Don't come looking for me again. And don't call me mother anymore. You and your father should both stay far away from me. I'm already married. I'll never be able to return to the prince's residence in this lifetime. And your grandfather would never allow your father to marry a woman who has already been wed. The little boy's lips trembled twice, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. Stepping out of the woodshed, she found the sky brilliantly bright. The boy behind me was crying loudly. But I felt uncommonly pleased. Cry if you like. If he knew his father had woken up and didn't have many years left to live, he'd probably have to cry again. When I looked up, my childhood friend, Brother Xing, was standing not far away. He Yunqing had waited for me through 2 lifetimes. But this time, when I threw myself into his arms, he could catch me firmly.